more shocking claim, because it appears that it is truly, if it's correct, and if it can be validated, he seems quite open, it appears that this may be yet another process which does some kind of transmutation of elements. He claims there's no carbon coming out of the exhaust, which would be unthinkable for putting a hydrocarbon fuel in, even if it's mixed with water. You have to get carbon out, and he's claiming that there are no CO or CO2 emissions from this, and there appear to be none visually. That is, there appear to be no soot particles coming out of the exhaust. So I hold out some hopes for this.
So our demonstration units that will be going out to about 25,000 stations between now and the end of the year or early next year are being retrofit as we speak now to include our system in the exhaust pipe and our injector body here with standard equipment that normally is supplied from the factory so that we can get it out to the public as quickly as possible.
After being rejected by dozens of U.S. manufacturers, Pantone now has contracts with several major foreign countries. Recently, several U.S. companies have decided to take a second look.
And the fusion between these components.
In 1989, two physicists from the University of Utah, Dr. Stanley Pons and Dr. Martin Fleischmann, created a media frenzy with their announcement of cold fusion in a bottle. Although several independent experiments reported similar test results, the cry of fraud quickly went up at MIT and other prestigious universities. The debunking was swift and merciless.
Throughout the history of science, anytime there is something that is very threatening to the established ideas, such as Galileo's revelations through the telescope and his idea, following on others, that the Earth goes around the sun, not vice versa, continental drift, all sorts of claims that ultimately became validated, the initial reaction of science is to say this is nonsense and to reject it and not even to look at the data. And I would say that the cold fusion and free energy or new energy phenomena are so threatening to the underpinnings of modern physics and chemistry and all other sciences that you get the expected intensely negative reaction. The real story about cold fusion is that it never died. Soon after the announcement in Utah on March 23rd, 1989, hundreds, thousands of people all over the world, scientists and engineers, began to try to replicate the Pons and Fleischmann experiment. And positive results kept coming in of all manner, including the energy, the excess energy, far more out than in than could be possibly explained by any chemical reaction or any previously stored energy. The unfortunate situation was that the U.S. Department of Energy masterminded a bogus panel of so-called experts, many of whom were biased from the start against the subject. They came up with the expected answer within 3 months, and they ratified it within 6 months, even as the evidence continued.
Those physicists, nuclear physicists that have been working with hot fusion, the tokamaks, this type of thing, they have a monstrous amount of evidence that shows exactly what they expect to have happen with nuclear reactions in this hot gas plasma. They believe, and it's a good first guess, that the nuclear reactions that would occur in a cold fusion cell should be the same. Well, Mother Nature doesn't always accept our predispositions to belief. Therefore, Mother Nature says, this is a different environment, these are different reactions, and hey guys, start studying a little harder and find out what's going on. The problems that occur in evaluating a cold fusion device have not been so much, does it work, but does it work every time? And many scientists are of the opinion if it doesn't work every time, then there's something wrong. Basically, the problem has been in the preparation of the metal. Now, this is particularly true in the heavy water experiments of Pons and Fleischmann. Certain materials will just absolutely close off the effect of the cells. Other things, the refining additions, will promote the effect. So there's a lot of study going on in that area. It's over 200 laboratories in over 30 countries have replicated or advanced or had successes in various types of cold fusion devices.
The Patterson Power Cell of Clean Energy Technologies of Dallas, Texas, is one of the most spectacular devices in the cold fusion field. It also happens to be the first device that has a United States patent, which is also very important. We got it almost by accident, since there are hundreds of patent applications that the Patent Office is rejecting. What this cell is it's very similar to the Pons and Fleischmann concept, except it uses tiny little metal-coated beads with either nickel, palladium nickel, or even sometimes just nickel, and ordinary water, not the heavy water, which Pons and Fleischmann started with. And it does produce, with a flowing stream of this liquid, or electrolyte, with just a little bit of lithium sulfate salt mixed in it, it produces spectacular energy. In fact, in one experiment, they turned the power off completely, and the cell continued to produce 20 watts of power, unmistakable, for at least 14 hours, and my understanding is that could go on for a number of days longer. The typical power ratios of this kind of a cell, it's very robust, totally repeatable, is anywhere from 10 to 1,000 to 1, okay, when you have even a tiny bit of input power. They've had to go over 1,000 watts with only a watt or so input electricity. Clearly, these cells can be made to self-sustain, that is, continue by themselves.
Dennis Cravens is an independent scientist who has done first-hand research studying the effects of the Patterson Power Cell.
The important thing is, notice over here, total excess energy is usually in the megajoules range. If you run through a chemical calculation of how much metal you have in there, about 20 milligrams, turn the crank, how many moles is that? How much? You assume about 100 kcal per mole for your chemist types of a typical energetic reaction, if you can think of one. We can't think of one, but if there was one, you maybe get 32 kcals if you burned all the metal. So we are 3 or 4 orders of magnitude more energy out of the system, integrated energy out, than if we were burning everything chemically. If you do the calculations, you'll find that you can get there. It's more likely that a few percentage of them are in the millions electron volt region.
It's been revealed recently that the Patterson cell will actually keep producing heat for at least 14 hours after it's shut off. This is a phenomenal discovery. It has not been advertised or publicized very well. But what that means is we're actually dealing with a free energy source. The inventors never used that phrase, and for obvious purposes, but the important thing is that it does need more understanding, and also it has the keys to the type of device that we need. The interesting thing about the Patterson cell, too, is that as a byproduct, it produces hydrogen and oxygen. It's actually using water, any type of water, and electrolyzing that water, and then just exhausting the hydrogen and oxygen. Now, we could see two views of that. For example, if we're actually forced into a situation where we're in an enclosed space and not able to spend too much time outdoors, which we already spend 90% indoors anyways, the supply of oxygen is very valuable, whether or not we even use the hydrogen. But it's possible we could also store the hydrogen and therefore have hydrogen-powered vehicles and use the oxygen indoors.
Another area that has emerged as a result of cold fusion, which is every bit as heretical and disastrous to the scientific enterprise as the over-unity and the greater energy out than in, is the transmutation of metals, that is, heavy metals. In ordinary cold fusion experiments, they have now seen in the metal changes in elements. For example, the production of copper, the production of other isotopes, such as rhodium, the change of palladium into other things. This is confirmed, there's no doubt about it, and it's occurring with minimal energy input.